The morning sun filtered weakly through the stained glass windows of St. Andrew's Church. The light painted the pews in soft shades of gold and crimson, but to me everything looked gray. Nothing could brighten the hollow ache inside. My husband Richard was gone. For 25 years we had built a life together, a home, a family, routines and traditions. He wasn't perfect, no one is, but to me he had always been steady, reliable, the kind of man who made everyone around him feel safe. And now, at 57, his heart had given out suddenly, leaving me with only memories. The church was filled beyond capacity. Richard had been a respected figure, a businessman, a mentor, a friend. Colleagues sat in rows, whispering softly. Neighbors dabbed their eyes. Old friends from college had flown in, their faces heavy with grief. But for me, the widow in the front row, all the whispered condolences felt like background noise. My hands were cold, clutching the folded program with his photo on the cover. Beneath his smile, the words read, "In loving memory of Richard Matthews, 1968 to 2025. I stared at those dates. Two small numbers carrying the weight of an entire life. How could 57 years be summed up so neatly, when to me it felt both like a blink and an eternity? The pastor gave a moving speech about Richard's faith, his generosity, his service to others. A few family friends stood and shared stories. How Richard once paid a struggling employee's rent. How he stayed late to help a neighbor repair their roof. How he was always the first to volunteer. Everyone painted the same picture. Richard the dependable. Richard the kind-hearted. I sat silently, my tears mostly dried. Grief, when it lingers long enough, numbs you. But then, just as the service neared its end, something unexpected happened. The lawyer, a tall, stern man named Mr. Reynolds, stood from the side pew. He adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. His presence was formal, almost too formal for a memorial. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice calm but firm, "I realize this is unusual, but Richard Matthews left specific instructions in his last testament. He requested that a portion of his will be read aloud today, here, in front of his family and loved ones." The church fell into silence. A will? At a memorial? That wasn't common. People exchanged puzzled glances. I felt my chest tighten. Why would Richard want this? We had discussed his affairs years ago. Everything was straightforward. Or so I thought. Mr. Reynolds pulled a sealed envelope from his briefcase. He unfolded a handwritten letter, Richard's familiar scrawl stretching across the page. His voice grew heavier as he began to read. "To my beloved family and friends, if you are hearing this, it means I am gone. I did not want to leave this world without telling you what I never had the courage to say while alive." A ripple of tension moved through the crowd. My heart pounded. To my wife, Claire, "For 25 years you have been my partner, my confidant, the center of my world. There are no words to capture my gratitude for the life we built together. But there is a truth I must confess, one I kept buried for decades." My breath caught. Around me, people leaned forward. 30 years ago, long before I met you, I made a mistake. I was young, reckless, and in love. From that relationship, a child was born. A son. I was not there for him. I failed him. And though I tried to bury that past, it never left me. I carried the weight of that choice every single day of my life. A wave of murmurs swept across the pews. My ears rang. A son? Richard had a son? My Richard. The lawyer's voice pressed on. "I cannot undo the years I lost. But I can do this. I leave half of my estate to Claire, my beloved wife, who gave me joy beyond measure. The other half I leave to my son, Daniel Matthews. Daniel, if you are here, I hope you can forgive me. I hope this will not just be an inheritance of wealth, but a bridge to healing." The air in the church grew thick, suffocating. Some gasped aloud. Others whispered furiously. I sat frozen, my fingers trembling against my lap. My husband, the man I thought I knew better than anyone, had carried a secret child all these years. And then it happened. At the back of the church, a figure stood. A young man, maybe in his late 20s, tall with dark hair and eyes that glistened with unshed tears. His hands shook as he stepped forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Daniel," he said. I'm his son," the room erupted. Gasps, whispers, even a few cries of disbelief. Head swiveled, eyes wide. I stared at the young man, unable to process. His resemblance to Richard was undeniable. The sharp jawline, the way his brow furrowed. My mind spun. How could Richard keep this from me? From us? Daniel's voice trembled. I didn't come here for money. I came because I wanted to know if he ever thought of me, if he ever cared. I never expected this. He gestured toward the will. His voice cracked. But he did think of me. Even at the end, my heart twisted painfully. A storm of emotions raged inside me, betrayal, sorrow, confusion. But also something unexpected. Pity. I rose slowly, every eye in the room on me. My knees felt weak, but my voice, though shaky, carried through the silence. Richard should have told us, I said. He should have faced this truth in life, not in death. But if Daniel is his son, then he is part of this family. And as much as this hurts, I cannot deny him. I will not. The crowd fell silent. Daniel's eyes widened, tears spilling down his cheeks. For the first time, I saw not just a stranger, but a piece of Richard. A chapter of his life I had never known. The lawyer folded the will back into his briefcase. The memorial ended, but no one rushed to leave. People lingered, whispering, staring, shaken by the revelation, and I stood there with Daniel, our lives forever altered. My grief had deepened, yes, but alongside it grew something unexpected. The faintest spark of compassion. Richard's secret had shattered the picture of the man I thought I knew. But maybe, in his final act, he wasn't dividing us. Maybe he was trying, in his flawed human way, to unite us. That night, as the hall emptied and silence settled over me, I realized my life would never be the same again. And this was only the beginning. The memorial ended hours ago, but the echo of Richard's words still rang in my head. A son. A son I failed. I sat alone at the dining table that evening, staring at the empty chair across from me, Richard's chair. For years, that seat had been filled with his laughter, his newspaper folded neatly, his coffee cup balanced in his hand. Now it was nothing but a void, and in that void, a stranger's face lingered. Daniel's face. I replayed every moment in my mind. His trembling voice. His eyes, so painfully similar to Richard's. The way the entire room had shifted when he stood up. He hadn't come for money, he had said. But was that true? Or was it just a performance? The skeptical whispers of the crowd echoed in my memory. He planned this. He just wants the inheritance. And yet, when I looked at him, I hadn't seen greed. I had seen longing. The next morning, I awoke to a knock on the door. When I opened it, Daniel stood there, his hands shoved awkwardly into his jacket pockets. He looked nervous, like a boy waiting outside a principal's office. "Mrs. Matthews," he said softly, I wanted to thank you. For what you said yesterday, for not rejecting me." I hesitated, my emotions tangled. Part of me wanted to slam the door. Another part wanted to pull him inside, to ask every question burning inside me. Instead, I nodded and stepped aside. "Come in." He entered cautiously, his eyes scanning the photographs on the wall. Family portraits, holiday dinners, vacations by the sea. He lingered on a picture of Richard holding our daughter Emily on her 5th birthday. Was he happy? Daniel asked, almost in a whisper. I swallowed. Yes, he was. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was thick, filled with unspoken questions. Finally, I broke it. "Why didn't he ever tell me about you?" Daniel's jaw tightened. Because he was ashamed. His voice trembled. "My mother was young. He wasn't ready to be a father. He left." She never spoke badly about him, but I could see it in her eyes. The hurt. "I grew up knowing my father was alive but absent." He took a deep breath. "I tracked him down when I was 18. I wrote him a letter." He replied once, said he was sorry, said his life was complicated, and promised he would make things right. Then, silence. My chest ached. Richard had carried this secret, and so had Daniel. Two lives haunted by silence. Daniel looked at me, his eyes wet. I didn't come yesterday expecting anything. I just wanted to know if at the end he thought of me. And when the lawyer read that will, it was the first time I felt like he had. In the days that followed, the family was divided. My daughter Emily, now in her 20s, was furious. How could he do this to us, Mom? She cried. A secret son? Half our inheritance gone? And you're just accepting it? I held her hands. Emily, I'm hurt too. But this isn't Daniel's fault. He didn't ask for this. He lost something too, a father he never had. But the whispers spread beyond family. Neighbors, colleagues, even distant relatives had their opinions. Some called Daniel an opportunist. Others called Richard a hypocrite. I felt caught in a storm I hadn't asked for. And yet, every time Daniel came around, quiet, respectful, almost afraid to overstep, I saw less of a stranger and more of a wounded soul searching for belonging. The will went through probate. Meetings with lawyers were tense. Numbers were discussed, accounts tallied, properties listed. Half to me. Half to Daniel. When the final papers were signed, Daniel looked uncomfortable. I don't want to take what was yours, he said. It's not about what's mine, I replied quietly. It's about what your father chose. And maybe this is his way of giving you the years he never could. He nodded, but I could see the weight in his eyes. Weeks later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, Daniel invited me to see something. He drove us out of town to a modest community center. Inside, children laughed and ran through the halls, kids from troubled homes, foster care, and single-parent families. This is where I volunteer, Daniel explained. I come twice a week. Teach them music, help with homework, just be there. He smiled faintly. Maybe because I know what it feels like not to have someone show up. I stood there, watching him kneel to tie a boy's shoelace, listening to him joke with a teenager about homework. In that moment, I understood something Richard must have seen too late. Daniel was not a burden. He was a gift. One evening, as the year drew to a close, I found myself in Richard's study. His journals, his letters, his handwriting surrounded me. In the back of a drawer, I discovered an envelope addressed simply, "For Claire." My hands shook as I opened it. My dearest Claire, if you are reading this, then my secret has reached you. I never told you because I was a coward. I was afraid you would see me differently, afraid you would leave me. But the truth is, I loved you more than my own pride, more than my own fear. Daniel was my failure, but you were my redemption, and my final hope is that you will forgive me enough to see him not as a threat, but as the part of me that I could not bear to face. If he becomes part of your life, then maybe, just maybe, I will rest in peace. Tears blurred the words. For years, I had believed I knew Richard completely. But love, I realized, isn't about perfect knowledge. It's about grace. Months later, on Richard's birthday, we gathered at his grave. Emily stood beside me, her hand entwined with mine, still conflicted but calmer. And Daniel stood on my other side, holding a single white rose. As we placed the flowers down, I whispered, "Richard, you left us with pain, but also with a choice. We choose to forgive, we choose to heal." Daniel's eyes met mine. For the first time, I saw not just a reminder of Richard's betrayal, but a living bridge between past and future. And in that moment, I understood. Richard's secret hadn't destroyed us. It had tested us. And in the cracks it left behind, something new was growing. Resilience, compassion, and the chance for redemption. Life never returned to what it was before. But in its place, a different life began. One where Emily slowly warmed to her half-brother. One where I found unexpected joy in watching Daniel guide children who mirrored his own childhood pain. Richard's will had shocked us, broken us, and reshaped us. But in the end, it gave us something money never could, truth. And though it came too late, that truth allowed us to rebuild. Not as the family I once thought we were, but as the family we were always meant to be.